welcome everybody back to this panel. Now we've heard Minister Barrot has to leave in 10 minutes, so with the permission of the esteemed panel, I will take advantage and start with you, Minister, to take advantage of the last 10 minutes. You can stay with us. Thank you. So if you look at the title of this panel, the Leviathan wakes, that raises quite a lot of expectations regarding Europe's security role or Europe's role as a global actor. So Minister Barrot, these expectations, of course, are very much geared also including to Europe's security role in the future. There is agreement on boosting EU security capabilities. A lot of things are happening, but there's also a lot of political and economic obstacles to overcome. So, the problem that we have is that Europe is entering a phase where the political urgency to build up these capabilities meets a phase of significant fiscal tightening. Shortly there will be a NATO summit where the spending target is expected to be raised to 5% of GDP. So how, Minister, can the tensions between these kind of very ambitious target and the need for Europe to ramp up its capabilities be reconciled? Where is the money coming from?
Thank you very much, and I'll, if you allow me, I will broaden my answer slightly by saying that Europe is going to be in this century that I think is really starting right now, a security provider for itself, for its partners, and for the world. A security provider for itself. We've been calling for strategic autonomy in the field of defense, and in particular the development of European industrial and technological defense base for 8 years now. But we cannot postpone the decisions any longer. Why? Well, because the threat has increased. Russia, that has an economy that is 25 times smaller than the NATO economy taken as a whole, spends 4 times more as a percentage of its GDP in its defense spending. It's 10% of GDP. It's a new conscription of 160,000 soldiers a few weeks ago, the largest since for 14 years. So we have an increase in the threat on our eastern flank, to which I would add the threat of terrorism and terrorism networks that hit India a few weeks ago, and we expressed our solidarity with India in the fight against terrorism. We've been hit many times, and the threat has not gone down. To the very contrary, from Sahel to Khorasan, the international terrorism networks are still there. And so the level of the threat is increasing, and the level of security is going to be challenged by the upcoming decision of the US to lower the level of their commitment, their physical commitment on European soil. And so we have no other choice but rearming, otherwise we will appear as prey, and we will be either drawn into wars that we will not have chosen, or we will have to find protection coming from superpowers that will impose some form of dependencies on us that we'll just reject. So this NATO summit is the opportunity for Europe to stand up, take responsibility, develop its own vision and capacity within NATO to provide security for itself. Europe will also keep and increase its supply provision of security for its partners. Let me focus on what we've been doing recently with our Indo-Pacific partners, including India, which has been a very strong partner in the field of defense for 7 decades now. But I would go back to the mission of the aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle, with the frigates, with the submarines, and with the boats that toured the region, that were able to implement military military exercises with partners, starting with India with the Varuna exercise. I would add to that our participation to the Atalanta missions, to the Aspides missions that are contributing to the security of maritime routes, but also to the security of this region, in which France has a very strong foothold, as I mentioned earlier. But I would also highlight the very strong bilateral security and defense cooperation agreements that we have that include the provision of defense equipment to our partners and friends. And then I would say that Europe is called to provide security for the world. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that we are entering in a phase where all the security architecture that we built together 80 years ago with the creation of the UN that rested on a very simple principle. Don't touch my borders, I will not touch yours. I respect your territorial integrity, I respect your sovereignty. And if everyone commits to this principle, then we have a chance to live in peace. This architecture that was then complemented by some regional security agreements like NATO, for instance, that was complemented with arms equipment, armament treaties like the Non-Proliferation Treaty. All this is now threatened and weakened. And Europe will stand up to defend this legacy, to adjust and reform it, and reform the institutions that are the guardians of this legacy, to strengthen them and make them fit for the 21st century. Let me explain. If we want to defend the UN Charter and this very simple principle, I don't touch your borders, you don't touch mine, we need to reform the institutions that are the guardians of these principles, and in particular the Security Council. And that's why we consider that India, alongside Japan, alongside Germany and Brazil, alongside 2 African countries, deserves to be included in the Security Council as a permanent member. As long as it is not the case, as long as India is not sitting alongside France in the Security Council as a permanent member, we'll have the hardest time to enforce the Security Council resolutions and therefore international law. But I want to go further. France and Europe will always refuse the logics of spheres of influence and coercion. We refuse a partition of the world between the so-called global south and a so-called collective west. We refuse to be dragged into a confrontation between China and the US. We refuse the confrontation between that some would like to stimulate between G7 and the BRICS. And the good thing is that next year, India will chair the BRICS and France will chair the G7. So I want to I want to make a call for creativity and innovation in 2026 in building bridges between the North and the South, between the BRICS and the G7, to avoid letting ourselves be dragged in tensions and conflicts that we don't want, and to give us an opportunity to defend collective solutions and cooperations over conflicts and confrontation.
Thank you very much, Minister, for this clearly very welcome call for creativity. I'm conscious of your time. I just want to make one very small follow-up. During the discussions here yesterday, the theme of securing regional stability in the Middle East as a precondition for large-scale infrastructure projects such as IMEC was discussed on various panels. So I can't help to ask you, the events of last night, the Israeli attack on Iran, How, in your view, if you may venture to take a first stab at how that would affect these prospects. I know France is hosting next week, together with Saudi Arabia, a conference at the UN on the Palestinian two-state solution. So maybe if you would take a first take on that.
So I'm going to be a little bit provocative. I'm going to reverse the perspective. But first, let me say that France is very committed to peace and stability in the Middle East. We've worked very hard with our US partners to bring peace back to Lebanon, which we succeeded in doing, to facilitate the elections of a president that was able to appoint a prime minister. Now, we still have some issues to solve in the south of the country in particular, and we are engaging actively with the US, with Israel, with Lebanese authorities to solve these issues, because we believe that Lebanon and Syria can become sources of stability for the region, and therefore make the region a land of opportunity, and therefore allow for projects like IMEC too. But now let me be provocative. Don't let yourself be convinced that as long as there is tensions in the Middle East, nothing will happen in terms of infrastructure and connectivity. Look at it the other way around. By making the IMEC corridors more credible, with the commitment of more and more parties that see the benefits of this connectivity. And France hosted on May 30 the first Sherpa meeting of the IMEC, which is a testament to our commitment to this project. The more it will be credible, the less the incentives for war and conflictuality will be strong. And this is a French minister speaking, who basically managed, France, to overcome a century of wars against Germany by putting on the table a very credible cooperation agreement on steel and coal. This happened 75 years ago. It started in my ministry. It was Robert Schuman speaking. Everyone else was saying, oh, it's 5 years after World War II. Germany is recovering faster than France. Let's raise trade barriers. Let's push back against Germany. And this guy and people around him, they said, no, let's put forward a credible cooperation mechanism, and you will see that the spirit, the minds will change. And that's perhaps one of the great benefits of this project that came from the G20 presidency of India, and that we are committed to turn into a success. It will also sort of showcase the benefits of cooperation against confrontation, and perhaps change the calculations of some of the players in the region.
Thank you very much, Minister. And with that, I will thank you very much for your participation. And please, ladies and gentlemen, please give Mr. Minister a round of applause. And thank you so much. Thank you very much to the rest of the panels for your patience. We will pick it up here. And let's widen the focus a little wider. And I would like to come to you, Prime Minister. When you think of the EU's role as a global actor, this great, and especially in the Mediterranean, we even talk about a security provider in the Mediterranean. From your vantage point, from the south of Mediterranean, what kind of security providers, or what kind of a security role would you like Europe to take?
Okay, thank you. Allow me to have a comment on the question that you asked to Excellency the Minister, on the pressure which is put on Europe today to increase the budget for the security and defense sector. Since I spent a large part of my career in the aerospace and defense industry, I think that the approach that we are hearing today about that, how to increase the budget, is not the right approach, because Europe has the technology, has the means, has a good technology which could be competitive, but the real problem is the fragmentation of that. And if really Europe set up a clear strategy with the commitment of all the members of the community, and with the right optimized organization, and I think making this synergy, they have everything in Europe to be competitive and to ensure that. And about the budget, on my sense, we are always speaking about money that, the public money that we have to put. It's not the right approach. Because the first thing to finance and to fund any effort of development, of innovation, to set up a competitive industry should come from the customer. The members are the actors, but are the customers. When they want to buy, if they want really to speed up and to push the aerospace, I mean the defense industry, they have to buy European by first. That's the main truth. And yesterday I discussed it with many of the actors here in Europe, and I told them honestly, since there is no commitment to buy European, you will never succeed to put the money and to get the competitive industry. So that's the remark. Then I will start by the challenges that we have all around here. And since we are speaking about Europe, so many challenges are facing Europe and facing Mediterranean and globally today in terms of security, but all these changes, economic, financial, which could induce to security problems. And I will speak about the challenges, or maybe the threats and challenges, which could be, if well managed, raise the opportunities. So there is the global one. He was speaking about that. We are in a shift now from the Atlantic to Indo-Pacific with a share of power, the rise of many other powers, and we are in a configuration and organization of the world which is no more compliant, which was compliant with the post-Second War configuration and no more available. So, and we are in between. So we are creating many tensions. In the neighborhood of Europe as well, you have the Middle East, you have Russia, you have Africa, and as well, there is the diversity inside Europe of national interest, which sometimes could not help to lead to a real vision, common vision, or sometimes just cannot help to have the efficiency in the action. So we know all the issues we were speaking, and we know what is happening now in the Middle East since 2 years, but since decades, what is happening last night, and we know that there is a lot of conflicts, a lot of latent conflicts, and we have to manage that. Unfortunately, today, we were hoping that through the multilateralism and the international institution, we can do some things. And we see that today, what we are living is more unilateralism and the expression of the force than the expression of the peace. And so I think the first thing is to rework and to emphasize on the fact that we need a new governance, a global governance, which could help in solving these conflicts. Otherwise, you know, that's the history we will have. In each change, you will have losers and winners and create turbulence, rivalities, and sometimes some confrontation.
Thank you. Let's stay with the security dimension for a moment. Thanos, you were a co-authored the expert report that informed NATO Strategy South. Perhaps you could say a few words on how you see the division along the lines of, strengthening multilateralism, burden sharing, of what the minister said. How you would see a potential division of labor between NATO, the EU, and other multilateral security actors in the Mediterranean and beyond the region.
Happy to do that, but a comment about the title. I understand the metaphor, but Leviathan has a bad reputation, and I think despite our shortcomings, Europe is a force for good and a stability provider. Then, if I may, a quick point about what you said about NATO and the 5% expenditures for defense. I don't think this is going to happen because no one is spending that kind of money. And even if we agreed to do that, it won't be implemented. At the end of the day, money is not growing in trees. So the extra money we're spending on defense, and we need to spend more, but if we spend too much, then this will come from other sectors. And this will affect competitiveness, social cohesion, and don't forget there is the far right is on the rise in many European countries, and this has a lot to do with economic conditions. One of the key findings of our work when it comes to NATO policies vis-à-vis the South is that we need to break out of the Brussels bubble, and that goes for the EU as well. I mean, most of the political and economic power and military power also is today outside of Europe. So we need to understand that there is a new world out there, and we need to connect. And also, we Europeans like to lecture a lot. We should try to learn to listen as well. What are the needs of our partners in the South? What are their views on various issues, and so on and so forth. Now, what Europe brings into the table, Europe is a big economic bloc. It's also a major maritime power. You know, my country by itself accounts for about 20% of global shipping. That means we are strongly interested in maritime security, freedom of navigation, secure supply chains. And these are areas we can and need to work together with a number of countries in the Middle East, in the Indo-Pacific, India more specifically, but others as well. And of course, Europe is strongly supportive of the rules-based international order, which has been threatened by various directions nowadays. So these are areas where we need to do more together, and partnerships is a key word. I think we certainly need to do more, and a number of initiatives have been launched over the past year or two. Rearm Europe, SAFE, and so on and so forth. All these have to be. We'll have to see how this will work in practice. Now, the Prime Minister said, and he's right, we need to start buying European, otherwise, at the end of the day, it will make no difference. If we stay fragmented, if we keep buying the majority of our defense equipment from non-European sources, then it all comes to nothing. And I'm confident that we will start moving in that direction. Now, Europe is a big ship. It takes time to turn. Also, fragmentation is a problem. At the end of the day, there will be 27 decision-making centers in the EU, perhaps a few more in the years to come. Same thing for NATO. This is something we need to live with. Is a structural, deficiency. There is not much we can do to change that. But I'm confident that gradually we will be doing more about our collective strength, about strategic autonomy, as the minister said. I have to remain confident and optimistic for the years to come.
Yeah, no, absolutely share that, and thank you for outlining making this cue to the economic dimension of this so clearly. Where you reference to the title in Leviathan is actually, if I got my reading right, the Leviathan is on in the mythology it's a devouring snake, but in the Hobbesian reading it's actually a moderating and regulatory force. So I don't know if the organizers chose this kind of double meaning on purpose for Europe, but we'll leave that there. Minister, I'd like to come to you. The Eastern Mediterranean, as Atanas has also hinted already, has lived a renaissance in recent years. It's a critical region, as we know, for EU energy security, supply chain security, and so on. Perhaps could you give a little of a sort of crisp roundup of how corridors, the supply chain security, connectivity between the EU and the Indo-Pacific will benefit both. We've discussed this yesterday already on several panels, but how especially what the specific role of the Eastern Mediterranean gas conundrum is in this context.
Thank you, Christina. Firstly, our condolences to the government of India and to the people of India for the terrible accident of yesterday. When it comes to the title of this panel, Leviathan Wakes, It depends from which side of the history you see Leviathan. Leviathan indeed is a monster. Europe is not a monster, of course. But on the other side of history, you see someone that is powerful. It's a creature that can exercise power. And I believe the title was chosen for the second, not for the first. In terms of what I heard from my colleagues here, I believe that Europe indeed needed a wake-up call. Unfortunately, this wake-up call came with the wrong circumstances, a war between Russia and Ukraine. However, the dependency of Europe on Russia, irrespective of this war, it was very wrong, in my opinion. And I will explain why. Because when you are looking for a Leviathan, meaning a powerful continent, immediately you think how you become autonomous. You become independent. And if you rely on energy, which is the source of your power, on a single source of supply, this is very wrong. Suddenly we wake up and we are looking around. I'm talking as European now. And indeed, rightly so, we looked around. We are trying to replace in very short period the natural gas which flew via pipelines to Europe. And we are replacing it with more expensive products. We are talking about LNG, liquefied natural gas, from many different other sources, which again is a dependency because you rely on other sources. And if we are striving for independency, we should look a bit internally to be independent with our own feet. Meaning, and it takes me to the Green Deal. The Green Deal speaks about moving to more sustainable resources. The sustainable resources is solar and wind. And you understand that Europe, as long as the technologies are there, can be really independent. In terms of reality now, the technology is not there to make Europe fully independent based on wind and solar. And if technology is being developed in order to make this continent independent based on energy now, I believe it will be very expensive. And it is very expensive. And suddenly Europe wakes up for the second time to understand that this Green Deal is shooting the feet of Europe straight, simply because we realize at some point in time, a bit late again in my opinion, that we are not competitive. Our industry is not competitive. And when your industry is non-competitive, you understand that you cannot sell your products, you cannot compete with other continents like China and the US, and you suddenly find yourself in a position of struggling to secure your financials, to keep your economies. And when it comes to the economies, and when there is a crisis, at least history taught us that the solidarity in Europe is not as yet there. I see an introversion as soon as there is crisis out there. Introversion meaning every country, every member state looks into securing the country first and then Europe. This is not strength. This is not power. This is not Leviathan. And just a final point. And because my ministry looks after energy, trade and commerce, and we will be chairing the presidency of the EU on the 1st of January as Cyprus, certainly these portfolios are very, very difficult. However, they are very interconnected because energy links to trade, leads to industry. Final comment, Christina. Middle East. In Middle East, history has taught us again that peace is a break between wars. I believe we are in a war now. We know, not I believe, but there will be peace coming. Certainly, and I agree with the minister, the French minister, that we should not stop securing infrastructure and securing corridors. The IMEC is a good conception. It is an economic corridor. It needs to be placed on the ground and put the words to practice. What is happening in the Middle East, what is our contribution as Cyprus? You understand, we are in the middle of the crisis. Today, there are many planes flying into Cyprus. There are people leaving Israel and the area. Cyprus is a next door stable country. It is a predictable and a reliable partner to any IMEC, and we will continue to be part of this process and be supportive of getting from the product, the energy, the goods from the source, which is India, to the destination, which is Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And I'd like to pick up the competition point that you just raised, and I'd like to put it to you, Valeria, and thank you for your patience. This element of competition, in particular among Southern European countries, that focus on national economic gain, that risks diverting the attention away from the bigger picture, which is exactly this long-term transformative significance of IMEC and similar connectivity projects and infrastructure projects for EU strategic autonomy and competitiveness. That is a dynamic that how do you see that developing? What could be done against it? So what could bring the focus back on the picture, develop more of a Team Europe approach with regard to these projects?
You mean the project of connectivity in general?
IMEC or similar significance.
I think that there's a great interest and a great awareness in Europe on the importance of connectivity, and we have seen the interest on the IMEC, on digitalization, on transport infrastructure. And I think in this field, in the field of connectivity, Europe has a great potential to play and can invest a lot. The point is that Europe has to think as Europe, as Team Europe, and not only as Italy, France, Greece, Cyprus. So the point is to create synergies, because European countries have the instruments, have the potential to create synergies and to think as Europe. And from an economic perspective, Europe is a global actor. It is perceived as a global actor. Of course, there are obstacles to play this role. For example, starting from the Mediterranean, Europe had the ambition 30 years ago to create an area of peace, stability, shared prosperity in the Mediterranean region, when it launched the Euro-Mediterranean Partnership, the so-called Barcelona process. And over 3 decades, many policies, many instruments have been put in place, but we know that the reality today is very different. No peace, no shared prosperity. But Europe, we said, and along with its member state, has great potential. We have to find again the convergence among southern European states to give a greater push in this direction. So there's the potential, but Team Europe has the good instrument to do this. We are always in the way to redefine instruments. After the pandemic, the Commission launched the new agenda for the Mediterranean. Now the process is. Now, the new Commission has set up a DG for the Mediterranean. It is in the process to redefine a new pact for the Mediterranean. So there's a good intention. Maybe we can start from a rethinking and to avoid fragmentation. And avoiding fragmentation in Europe is a starting point, I think.
Thank you, Valeria. We're going to take a few questions from the audience now. Please raise your hand and wave wildly because I cannot see very well. Do I see any hands? No wild waving so far, but questions to the panel on connectivity, on security, on China, any issues that haven't been raised yet and in your that are burning on your soul? Now is the chance. No questions? Yes, please. In the front and then the gentleman in the back.
Hi, my name is Kira Finke. I head the Center for Climate and Foreign Policy at the German Council of Foreign Relations. My question is on critical raw materials and the emergence of Europe as a global actor, or re-emergence, and the requirement to fulfill the EU Green Deal will require significant raw materials outside of Europe. And how can we form these partnerships in a collaborative spirit, and how can we overcome shortages also with regard to Chinese export bans? Thank you.
Thank you. The gentleman in the back, please.
My name is Vivek Kele. I'm coming from India, part of a logistics firm on invitation of CMA-CGM. What I wanted to check, I don't know who would answer that question, is US traditionally has been a beneficiary of a favorable immigration policy when it comes to attracting talent globally. Whereas where Europe has to emerge as a Leviathan, how is the European looking at immigration as a tool to attract the right talent so that it has the skill sets that are required to fast track the process of emerging as a Leviathan? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question? Not for now. So who would like to take it? So we have a question of raw materials. Yes, please.
Thank you very much for the question. It's a very valid question based on what I said earlier. Indeed, Europe suddenly looks into autonomy, independency. Defense is one of the subjects, but I will be more focused on the critical materials. I will speak about, although it is not my style, I will speak about the areas of development or weaknesses of Europe. The decision-making is very slow, based in comparison with other parts of the world that they are competing with Europe on everything. Critical materials, you know that what China did, they secured most of the deals globally, in Brazil, in Africa, and when the Leviathan wakes up, suddenly there is no enough critical material out there, and much of the critical material is in Ukraine, as currently. Without critical material, and you know that you cannot develop the technologies in order to make you autonomous, in order to make you independent. So I believe that Europe needs to focus on the Green Deal, but instead of putting the climate change as the reason for the Green Deal, we need to switch it around to be supportive of our economic model, the European economic model, and as a second reason, the climate change, instead of climate change and economic model. And this is exactly what China is doing. I'm not saying that China is doing the right thing, but at least this model had been successful because they are using the technology in order to support their economic model instead of climate change. For us, we need to do the same. Now, how we can deal with the critical material? It is a matter of technologies, how you develop the way forward and the path towards becoming independent and autonomous. Certainly, natural gas is a bridge towards that direction, but at the end of the day, we are looking into sustainability and viability and competitiveness. I believe Europe may be a bit late, but they have the muscle and the brain and the talent in order to develop that technology with less critical material, with a different process in order to get us to the destination.
Two general points before I answer the questions. First of all, transatlantic relationship, it remains a cornerstone for Europe's security and trade policies, and we'll do our best to make the Hague Summit a success. But as you know, this year there's a little more unpredictability on the outcome. So we'll see in 2 weeks' time. Second point, I think a common interest of all the countries in this room and many others is to avoid to be crushed by the two behemoths, US and China. So we need to work together on a number of issues. Critical raw materials, I mean, this is a problem for many of us. A number of countries, the US included, are working to address that problem. Just to give a small example, in my country, there will be a facility that will be producing gallium and germanium, and the expectation is to cover about 30% of Europe's needs, but that will take 5 or 6 years. In the meantime, we Europeans are exposed. Same thing with microchips. So this is an area where we have to seek partnerships and see how we can address that vulnerability. Immigration, yes, absolutely, it has been a source of strength for the US for many years. Well, not anymore, I think. The current administration has a different approach. I don't think that they will be trying to attract bright young people from other countries in the years to come. As for Europe, we have been struggling with that, not very successfully, I must say. On the one hand, it's sort of a schizophrenic policy. We're trying to keep immigrants out. At the same time, we have a demographic deficit, and we certainly can use bright young engineers and other scientists from other countries. But of course, look at the positive side. One country's brain gain is another country's brain drain. Last point. We're talking about IMEC. Can I introduce the term EMIC, Europe, Middle East, India Corridor? Because I think by the time IMEC, or whatever will be called, is completed, I think that will be a two-way route. Indian and other products coming into Europe, and then European products getting to the Middle East and India and other parts of Asia Pacific, because this is the economic trend.
Just to add something on migration, to my knowledge, at least in Italy, there are no policies to attract talents. And the point is that in Europe, over the past decade, even more, migration is seen more and more as a threat. The point is to counter illegal migration flows, and European countries are setting policies to stop migration through externalization of borders. That means relying on other countries to stop migrant flows. The example is the deal that the EU signed with Turkey in 2016 to manage migration flow through the Eastern Corridor to Europe. So unfortunately, today, in many European societies, migrants are seen more as a threat to their stability than a resource. And in a certain way, we have, of course, managed irregular migration flow, but also to change our mind and think of migrants as a resource. You mentioned the demographic imbalance in many countries, and in Italy there's a demographic problem. So migrants are an important source in this perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Valeria. I'll give you the floor in a second, Prime Minister, but we're almost at the end. Before I let you off the hook, I would like to propose that that all of you, at the end, once the Prime Minister has responded to the question, you all think of two adjectives for me. One that describes Europe's role as a global actor today, and another that describes it as you would like to see it in the future. Prime Minister.
One remark about the raw material. I think it's larger than the raw material. With the COVID crisis, we saw that we got a lot of difficulties on the supply chain. So today we have to handle all of this, and the first step is to make the cartography of the dependencies that we observed at that crisis. Then after that, we get the Ukrainian crisis as well, which pointed out many other difficulties. I think today we have to review the scheme. We have to know the mapping of what we need, which is critical. You have the raw material, you have the rare material, you have the components, electronic components, you have medicines, vaccines, all of that. And it means that we have to review what we went through, which is open globalization, to just adapt it to manage the crisis and to be able, with storage as well, with stocks and something like this, to manage all this, the shortages and the crisis. For the immigration, let's say, for example, here in France, there is a big debate, but it's an electoral debate more than anything. So what you heard about immigration, there is the events and sometimes the discussion, but the main and the fundamental thing is the demographic imbalance. Otherwise, the system is not sustainable. So we know that we will have immigration. We know that we need resources. We know, just if we are wise, we have to manage that to be really well balanced and peaceful instead of source of conflicts. Another ways, I think my last message is that in this turbulent transitional world, and since we are speaking about the role of Europe, Europe could be the moderator to help this transition to get another multilateral, another global governance system, which could help on the way of the peace, on the way of the dialogue, and to mitigate all the risks that we are living. And Europe has a presence on both axes. I started by saying that there is a shift from the Atlantic to the Indo-Pacific. Europe has the presence in both, so, and has the history, good and bad history, but that's the experience, and could serve as really a moderator. And we know that even in the post-war configuration, Europe played a big role in setting up this institution. So I hope that we will find the way of a wiser way and wiser organization and governance, including this new power, these new stakeholders, to hope that we will be in peace in the future.
Thank you, Prime Minister. So to wrap up, what adjectives characterize Europe as a global actor today and what ideally in the future? Valeria.
In the future, the wish is that Europe...
One adjective.
Yes, talk with one voice, 3 words.
So what is today?
Today, yeah,
That is
afterwards.
Okay. That counts as an adjective. Yeah. Thanos.
Well, today it's fragmented, reluctant, and slow moving. Hopefully in the future will be more cohesive, but also thinking more strategically.
Yes, our expectation from Europe is that it needs to be woke up throughout, irrespective of the crisis. We need to be in front and differentiate ourselves from many others. We need to be quick, and the future of Europe is bright as long as it has no dependencies.
So quick, awake, and independent.
Yes.
What is it today?
And alternatives. Have always alternatives. Either they are called IMEC or whatever else. This, we cannot rely on just one source of supply for anything. It's either a matter of defense, a matter of energy. Europe has the power and it has to exercise it.
So what to do is from that to today, it is slow, dependent, and asleep. In relative terms. Anyway, we'll just leave it there. Prime Minister, please, do you have any adjectives for me to wrap this up? And one adjective that characterizes Europe's role as a global actor today, and one that you would like to see it in the future?
We are stakeholders of this world. We are stakeholders of our daily life, of our security, and I think that through negotiation, through the consideration of the interest of everyone, and we went through multilateralism. Then we went through the globalization, and we thought that the globalization will create interdependence that will ensure stability. Today we are in the phase that who was the powerest in the world is observing that he loses some of the power, and we are in the phase of the contraction. Just find the right way to go through this interdependence, but interdependence to create prosperity and peace and not conflicts.
Okay, thank you very much. Join me, please, in giving a hand to this fantastic panel. Thank you so much.